Here to dig into this more deeply, Carrie Severino is with us, who is the Chief Counsel, Policy Director for the Judicial Crisis Network, and also Fox News legal analyst, author of the #1 book, The Russian Hoax, New York Times. And also we have criminal and civil liberties attorney David Schoen is with us. Carrie, let's start with you today. All these women have come out in favor of him. The woman tells a story where there was another man that was in the room at the time. He said that, I don't recall anything like that ever happening, but apparently he had issues in high school with drinking, but he was pretty adamant in his denial. All these other women over the years have said that Kavanaugh is just a great guy. What are we supposed to do with something like this?
Well, and then you add in, he's been in the public sphere, in public service for 25 years, undergone 6 different FBI background checks, never had a whisper of any kind of misconduct and all of that. The ABA also, when it did its evaluation, they interviewed tons of lawyers and judges that he had worked with. All of them said their summation was on integrity. He doesn't get an A+, he gets an A++. So it's a real challenge because it is absolutely at odds with the Brett Kavanaugh that everyone who knows him seems to know, with this one exception, doesn't seem to add up. And as you pointed out, Senator Feinstein's behavior doesn't add up at all. She sat on this and sat on this. Did she not think it was credible? Did she not think it was serious enough or relevant to the thing? Or was she just holding it in her back pocket to use as a political weapon later on? It's very hard to understand. I think what does make perfect sense, though, is you're seeing the same Democrats who, even before Kavanaugh was nominated, were calling for delay. And this is just the next in their ever-shifting reasons for delay. There was either because he's not Merrick Garland, so we have to delay, or because we're not getting documents fast enough, or we're not getting enough documents, or we think he likes baseball too much, or, the reasons have shifted. But this is just the latest in that. So it sounds to me like the Senate Judiciary Committee is working to make sure that Ms. Ford does get an opportunity to share her perspective, and then Judge Kavanaugh will get an opportunity to also refute that and give his testimony as well. But what I don't think we should see is this being used as a cynical delay device. And it seems like that's exactly the kind of politics that was being played with the way that this was leaked at the very last moment, right before the hearing. That doesn't strike me as someone who's really interested in finding out the truth. That's someone who's using this as part of their political agenda and just trying to do character assassination at the 11th hour.
Let me go to David Schoen here. I mean, this is such a serious allegation, but it goes back 35 years with the many numerous people that have come out and said this is not the guy that we knew in any way, shape, manner, or form. You're a criminal defense attorney. You have one guy that says, I have no recollection of that, and supposedly he was in the room at the time this happened, which would have been groping and fondling this woman against her will. What are we to make of it?
Look, as a criminal defense matter, if a criminal defense lawyer couldn't win this case for Judge, soon to be Justice Kavanaugh, he or she ought to give up the license. It wouldn't hold up in court. No prosecutor would prosecute the case, of course. Look, it's a very difficult situation because of the inflammatory nature of the allegation. And that's what Senator Feinstein knew. And we've seen grandstanding at one level or another between Spartacus and now Senator Feinstein. That's the unfair situation that was created for this Professor Ford. It's what these senators did by waiting until the last minute, by presenting this thing under, this veil of mystery to tantalize and that sort of thing. That's the real crime here that happened, it seems to me. If they're going to go forward, she supposedly has agreed to testify under oath. They should take that testimony, but it's very difficult. Certainly you can't prove that allegation to anyone's satisfaction, seems to me. And on the other hand, one might say they should move forward, assume that something she said is true. Would they still confirm Justice Kavanaugh if this were an incident that happened in high school, and even as described by Professor Ford?
What is your take on it when you read the piece in the Washington Post, Gregg Jarrett?
Well, unlike Clarence Thomas, this alleged incident did not happen in the workplace as adults. Instead, 36 years ago, teenagers at a house party in which it allegedly happened. That's point number one. Point number two, I think it is fair to examine the political motives of those involved in this, including the accuser and her lawyer. But finally, it's inevitable that a hearing will take place. And that's probably right and fair. It will test the credibility of the witnesses, the accuser, the accused, and the only other witness, if he's willing to appear, Kavanaugh's friend Mark Judge. If there's no corroboration, Sean, it would be unfair to allow a single, unproven, unverified accusation to ruin Kavanaugh's career. And so I think that's the bottom line.
Well, I would argue that, look, we've seen what has happened. You know, we have a principle in this country that people are innocent until they're proven guilty. I know everybody wants to rush to judgment. We got to stop the hearing. We got to do this and that. Why didn't Dianne Feinstein bring it up earlier, number one, when she had it? Number two, I mean, I think we've got to look at the entirety of this man's life and career. And when you do, this is totally contradictory to the person that we now see today and throughout the many, many years that he's been there. Then you have another issue, which is a little dicey, and that is that apparently the mother of Judge Kavanaugh ruled on a case involving her family. Is that a problem? Carrie?
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, that's really developing just now is this other case issue, and how could that play into it? But I think it is just looking at, as you pointed out, Senator Feinstein's behavior. She keeps on saying, well, I was trying to protect the confidentiality of this woman, but she had so many opportunities that were confidential, and that were they were dealing with FBI background check information on the phone. They had her private meeting in her office. She could have sent everyone out and said, look, I have this. Let's talk about it, just you and me, confidentially. That would have been totally fine and a reasonable thing for her to do. She didn't do that. She is not treating this as if she thought it was a serious, credible, relevant allegation earlier. So it's hard to believe now when she's saying, oh, this needs to be investigated. No, this is just another plank in your argument for why we need to delay this nomination. And it just doesn't ring true what she is saying here.
Is it fair to bring up, David Schoen, the fact that Kavanaugh's mother was a judge against her parents in a foreclosure case in 1996, or is that irrelevant?
Absolutely, it's fair. It's relevant and it's fair. It goes to motive. All of these things are, and as does the failure to report. Listen, nobody wants to take the position, especially these days, of impugning a potential victim's credibility in this kind of area. However, when it comes to an evaluation like this, you have to balance all of the facts. And what you have on the one side that may be true, we can't say the professor is lying. We don't know all of the facts. Nobody else was there. But this is what happens in a trial also. The jury is not an eyewitness to what happened. And therefore, you have to weigh all of the facts. And so you have an unreported incident with facts that vary from the therapist's notes to the account that we're hearing now. And I know the professor said, well, the therapist just misrecorded what was said to her, how many people were present. There were 4 people. There were 2 people, what year it was, et cetera, as you've already said, against this record that we have. And that's what Senator Graham has said. Senator Grassley, I believe, has said, we'll take this person's testimony and we will balance it against all of the other record evidence that we have about Judge or Justice Kavanaugh. We don't know what happened then. We maybe never will know, but we have to be fair both to the potential victim and to the candidate here who's had a very distinguished career, both personally and professionally.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back more with Carrie Severino, Gregg Jarrett, and David Schoen on the other side. All right, as we continue with Carrie Severino and David Schoen and Gregg Jarrett are with us. At the bottom of the hour, by the way, somebody that knew Judge Kavanaugh from that time period when he was young will join us. Why is this? We've been hearing reports all day of a social media scrub. From my understanding, nobody is really capable of scrubbing any social media site, but there's a record of it someplace, somewhere. Carrie, have you found any evidence, in fact, that scrub happened?
I haven't looked into that. It seems to me that probably she took down her site and did what she can. The problem is this whole thing reads a little bit like a campaign, and especially in the way that the Democrats, it fits just into their technique they have used so far. Senator Schumer said, I will do anything it takes to stop this nomination. And maybe we should have taken it even more seriously than we did. It's already been a circus up until now. You had the Spartacus moment. You had Kamala Harris suggesting she had information she didn't and that was going to be negative about him. You have threats and bribery against Senator Collins. People saying they want her staffers to be raped and people should be spitting in their food everywhere. I mean, this is ugly. And it's unfortunately, this just seems like the next ugly chapter in what has been a horrible process so far, so much so that Justice Ginsburg herself said, we need to step back, and this is not how how things should be done. And I think she was absolutely right. This process has become uncivil, and it's not proper for our government to get this nasty and political.
The only eyewitness, Gregg Jarrett, is a guy by the name of Mark Judge, who's a writer in Washington, D.C., who reiterated his strong denial of the allegations as that he had watched this alleged sexual assault take place. And he said, quote, now that the anonymous person has been identified and has spoken to the press, I repeat my earlier statement. I have no recollection of any of the events described in today's Post article or attributed to her letter in a statement. And before Ford's name was released, we know Judge Kavanaugh strongly denied it. This guy, Judge, said it's absolutely nuts. I've never saw Brett act that way, ever. Should this woman be allowed to testify in the next day or two if she wants?
It's pretty clear that you've got people like Senators Jeff Flake and Susan Collins who've insisted that there needs to be a hearing and that the people involved need to testify. So even Senator Grassley, chairman of the committee, has now acknowledged that will occur. The form that it occurs, we just don't know yet. There may be some interviews by staff members and then a public hearing that may be limited and confined. But again, as I said before, the value of that is to test and judge the credibility of the witnesses. Clarence Thomas came across as angry in his denial, and it seemed to win the day when he said this is a high-tech lynching. Judge Kavanaugh comes out and vigorously and vehemently denies that this ever happened, that this is not the person I am or was. Yeah. If Mark Judge is a good witness, as the only independent witness, then I don't see that Kavanaugh's hearing will, in the end, be defeated.
All right. Thank you all for being with us. Gregg Jarrett, Carrie Severino, and David Schoen.